I'm Jennifer Littleton, and I am an instructor at Howard Community College. We can't be, unfortunately, on the campus today, but what I'm going to share with you today is a how-to do a preliminary drawing for specifically realistic watercolor. We also are going to discuss how to select an appropriate image in which to paint from. A little background about myself would be that I'm a graduate of the Maryland Institute College of Art. I studied there for about 9.5 years, studying art education as well as figurative sculpture. I've also been a signature member of the Baltimore Watercolor Society, and I've exhibited on Fifth Avenue in New York for the American Watercolor Society, as well as in Los Angeles, California for the National Watercolor Society. I'm going to enjoy introducing you to a few ideas today in reference to, how you're going to begin a realistic watercolor. Now we're going to move forward to discussing how to select an appropriate image for realistic watercolor. Some of the things we want to consider are, we want a very strong light source on your subject matter, so that we have very strong highlights and very strong shadows, self-shadows and cast shadows, because watercolor depends almost entirely on light, because we utilize the white of the paper and we need to have a wide variety of values. This particular image is showing a very nice diversity in terms of values. I would not say, though, that this one has the best composition, but I do really like the lighting in this particular piece. Here's another example here with the giraffe. I like this composition much better, so this one actually could have a little stronger light source on it, but the fact that it's cropped, that creates additional interest, and that we have the main subject matter of the portrait head of the giraffe coming through into the bamboo, so you have that diversity of it being broken up by, these vertical and diagonal lines. The next example that we're going to look at here, this one happens to be two giraffes from the San Diego Zoo. The way that I viewed this piece initially is that it had additional lighting on it here, which was preferable to me. And overall, the composition here is pretty good, though when I utilized this particular piece, I did make some adjustments to it, because this one is a painting I'm currently working on. So I took this out, I moved this down, I took this somewhat of acts as a horizon line, brought it up, and I took this out as well in the piece. The lighting is a little bit more hot, in contrast here than this, so I would say this print is not as good as this one, but at least I do like the general composition in terms of, how much, space you have from the top and bottom and side to side. Now that we have selected our image that we're going to work from, the next step is we are going to execute a preliminary drawing, and it's a preliminary line drawing only, which means it's drawn just with lines, no shading at all is included in it. What we do first is we take the image and we're going to put a grid on it. So I'm going to have a vertical line, I'm going to have a horizontal line so that I see the absolute center point on the piece. Then what I'm going to do is say to myself, how many more quadrants might I need to be able to draw this successfully? Once I have my lines on my image, then what I do is I have to keep in mind this is going to be a one-to-one relationship, which means that your image is going to be the same size, here as it will be with your drawing. You don't want to scale it up or scale it down. We also need to have at least a 2-inch border around the drawing that we're creating, because as you can see here, you need to be able to have space to be able to tape to it and clip to it. We don't want to be taping and clipping into the image itself. Next, I'm going to say to myself, you know, how many of these quadrants might I need to be able to draw this successfully? With this particular piece, you know, I did the vertical, the horizontal, I did 2 more this way, 2 more this way. Many times with this grid type process, you will see other artists or other people do something where they're actually making and drawing this every single inch all the way, you know, this way and this way. And they'll literally number it and letter it A, B, C, D, and down this way, 1, 2, 3, 4. But for me, I feel like it's just overkill. I really can't draw something successfully with that many boxes in there. I find it an absolute distraction. Then I'm going to be able to now look into specific boxes as to how to draw them. So for instance, we have this horn that's right here. And I know that the lines here are not super clear to see because I've had this image for a while. But if you look at this, now all you have to draw is that particular shape. So you can see over here, we're right into the box, and all I have to focus on is the shape of that particular horn. Other shapes that are perhaps more difficult to draw, you might even have this snout right here. So you have that sitting right there, and then when you come over here, you have that particular shape where it's going to go into. Some other things that you consider too with this particular piece, it happens to be a portrait, which means to me that it needs to be, you know, this particular giraffe, not any giraffe. And it has lots of spots on it, and these particular spots are very indicative of this particular giraffe. So what I did in addition with this piece is I drew some small boxes around these spots to be able to put the spots into them over here. Not all of them did I put in though. You will see that under here that there are no boxes, and I believe in some of the other ones up here. Those I actually hand painted into the final piece. But the main thing for the preliminary drawing is that this is going to help you be able to keep your washes where they're supposed to be. You don't want to get lost at all. You want something that's going to set you up well in terms of your composition, in terms of the actual drawing itself, the lines, the shapes in which you're going to put all the values, all the washes. Don't forget your background though. Many people will put a lot of time and effort into the main subject matter itself, and then the background will be like an afterthought. That's not something that we want to do. This is something you could include on your particular piece. I just didn't on mine because I felt like I could paint this in successfully myself. But I would say that if you're a beginner, you may want to consider putting some lines in for something that's in the background. And once again, you don't want these bamboo pieces to be an afterthought as well. I actually do measure them fairly carefully, that they are the same size, shapes here that they are over here. Because what happens is, we don't mean to, but in our mind's eye, we make things very much pattern-like. And with that, then, things will start to look so regular and lined up, and then it will lose interest. Where in nature, the different angles that exist, we need to really capture those over here. However, it doesn't mean that you have to put every single one in there. You will notice that I have excluded a few here. There's a few here that I've eliminated as well. So you just want to have enough on there that it says to your viewer, with this, like in this particular image, you have the giraffe's head that's coming into the bamboo, and so it has that lovely atmosphere of what the giraffe is doing in terms of eating this bamboo. You want to capture that same feeling over here. I just wanted you to take a minute to look at the piece over here, that once this has been completed, what the purpose is that this gets transferred onto the watercolor paper. This is actually an example of the finished piece, so it's already been transferred. The preliminary drawing was transferred onto this. People many times are worried that you'd see the pencil marks in a finished piece, but you can see from the distance, you really can't see the pencil marks from a distance if you do it at the appropriate level where it's not too dark. But you can see how much, in terms of at least one example here, that the preliminary drawing really sets you up nicely for, having a beautiful completed piece. I wanted to share with you today, this is the piece that I've currently been working on. These are the 2 giraffes that are from the San Diego Zoo. This is an example of one of the preliminary drawings that I've done for one of my large pieces that I put into these very large and beautiful shows that I'm involved with. This particular preliminary drawing was very difficult for me to execute. These animals have, as you can see, a lot of spots these giraffes have. And to be able to show a true portrait of these animals, in my opinion, just the way that I work, that you really have to be able to have all of these spots look as closely as to these particular animals as they can be. So what did I do in this particular piece? In addition to my normal routine of doing the vertical and horizontal line, as I described in the other ones, and doing 2 more here and 2 more this way, I did a tremendous amount of boxes on both of these, the mother and baby giraffe, so that I could, as closely as possible, execute these spots to make them look very, very accurate. This has been, I believe, to be the most difficult preliminary drawing I have ever done. And I can say that I have had students and others that have looked at this preliminary drawing and said, it looks like something Leonardo da Vinci did, which was a huge compliment considering he's one of my most favorite artists. But I did want to just share this with you so that you could see not only the details in these 2 giraffes, also the rocks. And here you can see now where I placed things, that the rocks came down, this Nelson water came out, this came out, this came out, and this line went up. So now you can see on the preliminary drawing where these changes that were made in terms to try to attempt to make this a better composition. What was difficult as well was how was I going to be able to visually show all this light that's hitting on these little branches up here in the palm trees. And so what did I do? I drew lots of little boxes and to be able to reserve the white of the page, because I personally don't use masking fluid. I reserve the white of the page and just do my best to not paint there. So I did want to show you, this piece is not finished right now. It's still a piece I'm working on that's in process, but I did want to share it with you so that you could see what a realistic watercolor looks like while it's developing, and you can still see possibly some of the preliminary drawing through it. So I'm just going to take down my preliminary drawing and be able to show you the piece that's in process here. So here we go. You may be able to see in some places here where you can see the drawing underneath, but all that very detailed drawing, because there's darker painting that's already on here for the mother and baby giraffe, the majority of this, you can't see the preliminary drawing any longer. You can in here and in here where it's still lighter, but in here it really is blending in nicely with the animals at this point. Same thing with here and the rocks, that they have pretty much disappeared here. It's only in places where the painting isn't completely developed that you really can see at this point still aspects of the preliminary drawing. But if it's done correctly, by the end, almost all of the lines entirely will blend in with the painting. So now we're going to go over the supplies that you will need to do this particular project. So we're just doing the preliminary drawing. So all you're going to need are drawing supplies to do this project. The type of pencil that I personally prefer is this HB pencil. This is a Statler Mumograph, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, made in Germany. I like this pencil the best, though you could use any HB pencil. And the reason why I prefer HB is that it's the lightest B pencil that they make. H's and F's are really pencils that are too hard. They can actually make trenches in the paper. And these particular pencils are ones that I use actually when I'm rendering the watercolors if I need to do any drawing, direct drawing right onto the watercolor paper. We also need an eraser to be able to do this as well. The Statler Mars plastic eraser looks like this. I prefer this over something like a pink pearl eraser, even though people think that pink pearl erasers erase completely. I actually have seen where they have left pink marks on some of the paper. So I would definitely suggest that one. You don't have to have a pencil sharpener, but I think it's a good idea to have. These aren't really expensive. A lot of times they're only about $1 in a drawing store. It's very important when you're doing your drawing to have a very sharp pencil. And something else you want to consider that, of course, we're doing the grid method. With the grid method, what do we have to do? We have to use rulers, okay? So you could use just any old ruler, but I will show you the difference that they now have between a metal ruler that has a cork on the back and the old-fashioned wood ruler. So when you see with the old-fashioned wood ruler, when I press against it, it actually slides. Where with the newer rulers that they make that are metal with cork on the back, you put it down, you press against it, it stays right there. And when you're doing these preliminary drawings with the grids, it is very frustrating. You can imagine if you're trying to hold the ruler quite perfect to make, these grid marks, and it's, shifting all over the place. So I would strongly suggest that if you don't have a ruler, to go ahead and get one of these metal ones with the cork on the back. The last item we need is the paper. What's preferable is, I do like the Strathmore paper, but this is a Strathmore sketch paper. I prefer a bigger pad like this that's an 18 by 24 inch paper. This, normally for drawing, we might want something that's like an 80 or 90 pound paper, but this paper is 50-pound paper. 50-pound paper I have found to be the best to use at this point because it's thinner. Remember, this preliminary drawing is not for doing a finished piece in terms of, it's not going to be a finished drawing, so it doesn't matter if it's thinner. Our purpose is we want to do the preliminary drawing to just have it be accurate, and then for us to be able to transfer it onto the watercolor paper. And because we use a transfer process that uses this graphite paper that goes underneath it called cerol, that comes in a roll, you have then 2 layers of paper in which you're going to be, tracing. And so it's through that pressure that's going to push it through onto the watercolor paper. So like I said, the thinner paper, this 50-pound paper, is actually preferable. So this is all you really need right here. This is just my pointer tool. So here we have, you just need your ruler, your pencil, your plastic eraser. Definitely, you've got to have some kind of sharpener and your paper. Well, I did want to thank you today so much for spending your time here with me. I'm sorry that we can't be at Howard Community College yet, but remember, Jennifer Littleton, I'm teaching the classical drawing class as well as the realistic watercolor class. So hopefully I'll be able to be on campus with you real soon at Howard Community College in the Hurwitz Center. Thanks so much for spending time with me today.